What's up, everybody? Back with our picks in NFL Week 4. Through the first 3 weeks of the NFL season, it has been nothing but crazy with upsets occurring in all the weeks and some pretty big ones at that. I think this is 3 weeks in a row where the heaviest favorite of the week has lost. Let's see if we get another one of these upsets in Week 4. Ready to kick it off, Slee, and talk about each game. Obviously, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We got this and Survivor and other content coming your way. Always best to keep up with all things NFL and professional picks.
Yep, let's jump right into our week four matchups. No international games this week, no bye weeks yet. Another full slate for us in week four. We have the 1-2 Dallas Cowboys heading to the also 1-2 New York Giants in an NFC East matchup. Giants kind of riding high off of the win against the Browns. Malik Neighbors really coming into his own. And the Cowboys really weren't that much in the game against the Ravens. Made it interesting late, but kind of as we predicted, Ravens took care of business in that one. So two teams trying the opposite directions. What is your take on this matchup?
Yeah, it's really tough for me because I think this Cowboys team has a lot of talent in a lot of spots, and but clearly not playing like it. Uh, Conversely, you see the Giants, who are devoid of a lot of talent in a lot of spots, but playing really well with what they've had over the last 2 weeks. I think they, with the kicker, they would have beaten um, the Commanders over there. So I kind of think of them as at least 1.5 and 1.5, if not 2-1. Given a freak accident here, my gut tells me that it's a gut check bounce back game for the Cowboys. I really like, again, the guys they have and the chess pieces they have on defense, but really the puppet master in Mike Zimmer on that coordinating that side of the football there. The real knock is the run defense here, and they got to figure that out. Luckily, the Giants don't have the greatest run game, but Devin Singletary's been playing very well for them too. I just think it's a game where the Cowboys refuse to be the little brother of the Giants. I don't think it's that time yet. But they certainly don't look great. Dak Prescott doesn't look terrific. The run game's not going like we knew and thought it wouldn't. But I just think with that defense, it's time for the Cowboys to, look like the defense that they have had over last season and even the first game this year. So I'm taking them to win and cover.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Cowboys. I'm not going to try to buy too much into last week, although the Giants looked good and should have even beat the Commanders, like you said. Kind of a one-man show. I mean, they do have Singletary, but I mean, it's the offense is running through Neighbors right now. He's
Neighbors looks
second in
great.
the league in receptions, fifth in the league in receiving yards. But the Cowboys have the personnel to at least slow them down. They're out with Deron Bland for a few more weeks, so I think this defense should pick up as the season goes along. Like you mentioned, new coordinator as well. But yeah, I'm not gonna sell on the Cowboys now that they're not playing too well. The defensive stats and PFF all kind of tell me to take the Giants in this game, but it's still so early in the season. Cowboys have played tougher competition than the Giants have so far. So I'm rolling them on the road. I think they've dominated this matchup over the last decade, although I don't really have a stat for it.
Yeah, a real mechanism the NFL uses when creating the schedule is to pair poor teams with poor teams in the first few weeks of the season and good teams against good teams. And the Cowboys unfortunately ran up against the Ravens team that was 0-2 and desperate for a win. And they fell flat. I think this is the time for the Cowboys to get a chance to beat up on a below average team, the Giants. Now you can make the argument that the Cowboys are a below average team, but I'm not believing that yet. And again, I think it's a time for them to take it out on a lesser opponent. They've had a tough last few games and ran into a red hot Saints team at the time. I think that now's the time they see an offense that's subpar for the first time this season.
Yeah, now I'm with you. Move along from our Thursday night matchup, heading to New York. We got the Broncos coming off the big win over the Bucks. They're now sitting at 1-2. Bo Nix getting his first career win, and the Jets are now 2-1. Really bouncing back well after that Monday night opener loss to the Niners. Aaron Rodgers has attempted more passes in each game, thrown for more yards in each game, and also run for more yards in each game. So he's coming back to his former self. I mean, he's not going to be Aaron Rodgers he once was, but I mean, he made some insane throws against the Patriots last Thursday night. They have the extended time playing on last Thursday. So I like the Jets a lot here, -7. Are you buying in the Broncos at all after their big win over the Bucks?
No, not really. I'm impressed with the win, but I think we were both on the Broncos kind of since the trap game there. We were all over the 0-2 teams for better or worse last week. Broncos being one of them. I definitely think the Jets are going to win this game. Rodgers looks incredible, and in making it look effortless is really what I'm impressed with. He still has the same flick of the wrist, ball flies out of his hand at 100 miles per hour, type mechanics and fluidity to his throwing motions. It's just insane. I really with the total this low, and personally, I love the under game. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of points here. It's hard for me to take a team that's favored by 7 points, but it's going to be really hard for Bo Nix and this Broncos team to move the ball at all against this great Jets defensive front that has been not really playing to their potential, in my opinion. They're not even, according to PFF grade, at above average defense right now. Now, I think we all know that's not the case, at least personnel-wise, but they're not playing as great as they were last season. Sauce Gardner isn't locked down. CJ Mosley, I think he's been out at least one game there. They're just not playing the level I thought they were. This is probably going to be the game where they turn around. I'm not going to take the Jets -7 here because it's just too much in a low-scoring game, but I think they're going to give this Broncos offense fits. I'm definitely not buying them after the win against the Bucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the Jets did hold the Patriots to 3 points last week.
Yeah,
I think we could see something similar here with Bo
that's true.
Nix.
That Patriots offensive line, though, like we talked about how
Yeah,
poor it was before. Oh my God. I think they have the 49ers. We'll find out later. Um, that's just tough for Jacoby Brissett. We can move on, but that's just
yeah,
heinous. Worse than the Bears.
yeah, impressive, honestly. But moving on, we got an NFC North matchup, the stacked NFC North this year. The
For
3 and
real.
0 Vikings heading to Lambeau to now play the 2 and 1 Packers. Malik Willis winning both of his starts to pretty much everyone's surprise. But both teams coming off wins, and the Vikings are arguably looking like the best team in the NFL after knocking off the Niners and then the Texans last week.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any real conversation left on if Darnold can succeed in this offense. I mean, they've proven it and they've beaten the top competition in the league. Jordan Love is a limited participant in practice, so we might see him back for this game. I don't know if they push it with Malik Willis winning the last 2 games. I don't see there being any rush. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, that definitely plays into this one. Do you like the Packers -2.5 at home, or is this only a game you're taking them? Love comes back.
If Jordan Love plays this game, let's say this, if Jordan Love practices this week and plays, I'm going to take the Packers because, like you said, the Vikings are looking like the best team in football, the most complete team in football. They've got the best resume so far after taking down both the Niners, who were the favorite to make the Super Bowl and winning it out of the NFC, and then the Texans, who were looking great this season, looking great last season, and really popular among the AFC teams to make a run at the Super Bowl too. Given all of that, to only be really treated as equals to the Packers, given that this game's at Lambeau, is really surprising to me and leads me to believe that there's something that tips the scales in the Packers' favor that we don't really realize. Maybe their zone defense is really good and Sam Darnold struggles against the zone defense, that kind of thing. There's something here that we're not seeing on the surface because I think it's hard to look at these two teams from what's happened and say that the Vikings are an equal team to the Packers here.
Yeah,
Something's
no, I
going
agree.
on.
Definitely one of those
And
lines that makes you, if you're just going off of what you've seen the last 3 weeks, you're
yeah,
like, how
and
are the
you
Vikings
can't be
playing
betting like
here?
that or taking games like
Right.
that. I'm taking the Packers at home to beat the Vikings ahead in the first loss of the season. I think it's gonna be a close game, as the spread implies, and I don't think the Packers are the better team. But I've been loving the way LaFleur is running this offense. He's really figuring out how to use all of his weapons. It's you can't take away all the pieces that they have. And even with Malik Willis, he offered up a lot of weapons just with his legs. And so he's LaFleur, that being, is really running this offense terrifically. And I'm going to keep riding his play calling.
Yeah, I'm with you again on this one. Packers have the best turnover margin in the league at plus 2.3 per game. I mean, they know to run the ball. They have really the personnel to, I mean, they could hand it off to Jacobs plus 20 times, but Marshawn Lloyd, I mean, going to Jaden Reed too on the sweeps.
Love
Like,
Jaden.
they got tons of guys. And yeah, I mean, Lambeau, Packers at home is always tough.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, let's move on. Another divisional matchup. Moving on to the NFC South this time. Got the 2-1 Saints. Offense definitely slowed down last week in the loss to the Eagles, kind of as we predicted on last week's video. But they're heading to Atlanta to play the now 1-2 Falcons. Both teams coming off of losses, but to solid opponents. Um, yeah, what are your thoughts on this one? At almost even spread, Falcons is slight favorites at home.
Yeah, like a lot of times with divisional opponents at home, I'm gonna be taking the Falcons here. I think the Falcons look great. I think they arguably could have beaten the Chiefs and could have been 2-1 here. Questionable no call and pass interference in the end zone late in the fourth quarter there. But this Falcons team's got a great offensive line, can run the ball really well with both Bijan and Tyler Algier. They're getting Drake London involved in this offense. Darnell Mooney, former Bears, looking great in this offense. Even Kyle Pitts is flashing the leather a little bit now and then. Offense, in my opinion, looks really good. Now, I think what limits them is Kirk Cousins' mobility. You've seen the defense pass rush specifically get to him a little bit quicker than normal, and him not really being able to evade it like he used to be. But I think that'll slowly come back to him as he, works back after that Achilles injury. And then on the defense side of the football, having Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates is going to be so valuable for a game against the Saints where they love throwing the deep ball. Those safeties are going to be in the pass game early and often here. And I can't imagine that two other safeties I'd rather have on my team than these guys. I didn't really talk much about Saints, but it's more about the Falcons here. I think they're actually the better team. Maybe not better play calling, which is why I think is helping the Saints a lot here. But I think they're actually the better team, and I like them. Especially, I like Kirk Cousins over Derek Carr, who's been very variable, although it is an election year.
There's a good point to add in there. But touching on the Saints a little bit, we called it last week that that offense wasn't going to keep up that insane pace that they were on. But my issue with them is they're so one-dimensional with Kamara. Last week he had 29 touches and the rest of the offense had 14. So I
It's
mean,
wild.
kind of predictable. Obviously that's not always going to be the case, but I mean he had phenomenal first 2 weeks. But it really seems like if he's not going to carry them, then the offense just slows down quick. I
Hmm.
think teams start to figure that out sooner than
So
later.
you're on the Falcons as well this game, or you
I'm
take the
also on the
Saints?
Falcons. I
Nice.
mean,
Hey, we're same
we're
page.
so far. But all right, let's move on. We got the wild card matchup from last year, the 2-1 Eagles heading to Tampa to play the 2-1 Bucks. Um, Eagles, as we mentioned, they beat the Saints last week and really just a grinded out type of game. And the Bucks had a terrible showing in a 19-point loss to the Broncos. But this Eagles team is banged up. Dallas Goedert had an insane game last week, going for I think 170 yards.
Yep.
AJ Brown's been dealing with a hamstring, and then Devonta now dealing with a concussion. So we could see both of them out of this game. Saquon's still playing great football, but I mean this Eagles team is definitely banged up. They're headed on the road, and they are road favorites in this one. Um, I'll get to my point. I mean, I'm on the Bucks plus 2.5. I think this is. I just feel relatively the public loves the Eagles. I mean, they have a lot of great personnel, but I mean, the Bucks at home. I'm not sold on the Eagles secondary yet. They did look good last week, but I don't know. I think Baker in this offense gets it going against the Eagles in a team that's more so built around the line, and whereas the Bucks kind of zag in that sense. I don't know. I like Baker to repeat on, especially his home dogs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this game's really tough for me. It's really all dependent, or very dependent on AJ Brown playing. I have a feeling if Devonta Smith is out, then he is going to be in. Um, I want to take the Eagles. It's just so interesting because I think the Eagles are built very similarly to the Lions in the way that they dominate both sides of the offensive and defensive line, and they have a really good stud number one receiver in like AJ Brown. or Amon-Ra St. Brown, good tight end Laporta versus Goddard. Somehow the Bucs were still able to topple over the Lions. It seems like they should be able to do the same against the Eagles, therefore. It's I really do like the Eagles, and I love their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I love the guys that are actually calling the plays. I don't love Sirianni as a head coach or the decisions that he makes. It's really tough for me. I have to take the Eagles here if AJ Brown plays. I just think that with their offensive line and their run game specifically, I think that's where they really outflank the Bucs. Then I think that could be the difference maker. I think it will be the difference maker this game.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
this one's a
yeah,
good one.
run game scares me.
This is almost a true coin flip. The Bucs do scare. Like, who's more likely to be?
I love the Bucks if they get the early lead. I mean, whoever
Yeah,
takes the lead first, I think they end up winning the game.
Jalen Hurts does not look good at
Football
quarterback.
play
Ah,
style.
I honestly I want to say the Bucs, but my gut says, or really my brain says Eagles, but my gut tells me I'm going to be wrong on this one. So we'll revisit this one
We'll
next
see.
week.
All right. Next up, we got maybe the worst matchup of the week, but still some intriguing storylines. The Bengals now 0-3. Um, one of their worst starts with Joe Burrow, not counting his rookie year, but they're heading to Carolina to play the Panthers. Called it last week. We loved the Panthers at plus 5.5, but
Yep.
they won outright and handedly with Dalton leading the way. He's going up against his old franchise. I'm sure he's already had this rematch in, at well,
Sure.
some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the Bengals, they've lost some close games, all three losses within 6 points. So I mean they're still competitive, just haven't been able to pull it out. Are you riding with Dalton? Do you think he does it again? Or I mean, kind of how we've been going about this. I mean, this 0-3 Bengals team has to be so hungry for a win.
They have to be. Well, it's interesting that Andy Dalton is 2-1 versus the Bengals in his career. So he has lived up to the revenge game hype. But yeah, I think I got to take the Bengals here quite simply because they desperately need to win. They're basically out of the playoff contention at 0-3. 0-4 they are. And there's never been like last week was a must win and they lost. This one's just as big as a must win. And playing the Panthers, who have had a lot of flaws with or without Bryce Young. Um, I don't think Andy Dalton can mask all of them, although he did look great and made some terrific throws last Sunday. I'm taking the Bengals here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think, yeah,
And I'm
the
taking the
division.
Bengals minus 4.5, Sliwa. Taking spread too.
Let's do it. I'm on it. All right, next game, another divisional matchup. Moving to the AFC South, but another 0-3 team with the Jaguars. Things seem a little bit different there than maybe the Bengals 0-3. I feel like I'm still confident in the Bengals. I'm really questioning how the Jaguars will be this year now. I mean, expected them to be a competitive team, but both of these teams are coming off of losses, going to a tough Houston Energy Stadium. And I mean, you see it there with the spread, almost a touchdown underdog with the Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence has now lost his last 8 NFL games. I mean, do you see that changing here, or do you think this could be a competitive spread?
Everything that I've seen makes me think that the Texans blow them out. That defense specifically, I know they were playing a great Josh Allen. That defense specifically looked awful. I can even excuse the run game because the Bills have a great offensive line and you have to respect the threat of Josh Allen. But there were some just their wide receivers are not above average objectively at this point in their careers. And the separation they were getting from the Jacksonville secondary was unbelievable at times and really just flat out embarrassing. But divisional game, again, hungry team, desperate coaching, I'm sure. I have to keep taking the Jags until they cover one spread. The worst teams in football in recent history, like were always above average in the spread. And this, like, remember when the Lions, like the year before, last with their first year in Dan Campbell when they lost like their first 10 games, they were recovering almost every time. So when people's expectations of a team get so low, that's exactly the time to start liking them the spread. That's exactly the time in this week to take the Jaguars spread. It's really foolish and difficult to take the money line. So again, I'm going to take the Texans here, but I think it's going to be a close game. And
Yeah, no,
honestly, I think there's value in betting the money line here for the Jaguars. I don't have the balls to do it personally, but this is a divisional game, and that's when teams pull off the craziest upset, it seems.
Yeah, no, I mean you're totally right. It's always those divisional matchups. I mean, I can't get behind the Jags money line, but
No,
I mean, the
it's
spread,
hard.
yeah, I mean, tough play, but plus 205 could be worth it. Next matchup, we have the now 3-0 Steelers going to Indianapolis to play the 1-2 Colts. Both teams coming off of wins. The Chargers losing to the Steelers in a game that's pretty low scoring, but Steelers defense continues to dominate. And the Colts really just won the ugly fest, in my opinion. That game was a
Oh
horrible
my
loss.
God. It's disgusting.
Still bottom third in QBR, but I mean, he's not turning the ball over. He's running the offense well enough, but really letting the defense win them games. I mean, this one's tough for me. Do you, yeah, which way you leaning with the Colts is home dogs in this one?
My whole thing, especially against the spread, but in a game this close, it's basically a pick 'em game. My whole thing is fading the trends. I think the Steelers are worse than a 3-0 team. And they're certainly worse than a 4-0 team. They're not on the same caliber as like these Bills and Chiefs teams. They're even the Vikings. And I think the Colts, we saw them hang with the Texans. We know what they're capable of. They looked really ugly last week, and yet, despite the Steelers looking good this far, and the Colts looking this poorly thus far through 3 games, they're still a pick 'em game basically. I think I'm gonna like the Colts here to win this game. I think what really is advantageous for them in this game specifically with the low total is their ability to crack open the deep play at any given moment. The guy like Alec Pierce, the guy like Pittman, the guy like Josh Downs, and obviously the cannon arm that Anthony Richardson has. You don't see that kind of big play explosiveness with the Steelers. Obviously, they have such an advantage on defense with a guy like TJ Watt, that is the biggest playmaker and home wrecker in the backfield in the NFL, but I think it's time for the Colts to get a win here in a maybe overinflated, overconfident Steelers team.
Yeah, this one's tough for me. I mean, I'm convincing myself on the road team again. Similar
Yeah.
situation to last week when I like the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, now it's giving me some flashbacks. I still like the Steelers. I trust the defense. I trust them enough. Anthony Richardson, 6 interceptions through his first 3 games this year. I
Yeah.
mean, if the Steelers can win the turnover margin, I think they can win it. Just rely on defense alone.
Yeah, I mean Justin Fields is doing a great job not turning the ball over.
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, we saw him in Chicago. We know how it goes. Next game, we got the 1-2 Rams going to Chicago to play the also 1-2 Bears. Rams, in my opinion, had probably the best comeback of all of last week. I did
Oh
not
my
think that was
God.
even possible. But Stafford really rallying the team. Just seemed like he had a massive play every time they got the ball back. And like we just kind of talked about, Bears too sloppy in the loss, have not been able to establish a run. But this is a really banged up Rams team. I mean, Puka will definitely not be back yet. Maybe no Cup still. Kyron Williams did have a really good game against the Niners, but I mean, this Bears defense is legit despite all the offensive struggles. I mean, are you getting behind the Bears to really get a good win at home, or do you trust McVay more against Eberflus?
It's tough. I've been against the Bears a lot this season, but I do think they win this game. I think that was a desperation 0-2 win for the Rams at home and a very emotional win at that. A lot of times you see a letdown game after. The last time I was talking about a letdown game was when the Lions beat these Rams team in overtime, and then we talked about the letdown game against the Bucks the next week. So it's a very real phenomenon, and I think they're susceptible to it again this week. The Bears, just like you said with the Steelers last week, if they can win the turnover margin here, or really just don't throw the ball to their team 3 times, 2 times a game in an interception from Caleb Williams, they will win this game. I think there's no denying the legitimateness of this Bears defense. I think it comes to play enough where they're going to just win this game. Caleb Williams, a lot of bright spots with throwing almost 350 yards last week. If they can come without the turnovers, they're gonna win. They're getting the ball. The Cole come out a lot more at tight end, which I love. And again, I just think that defense in combination with injuries to all the offensive players for the Rams gives them a good spot here. They're not letting up those big chunk plays that you saw um, the Rams get in that fourth quarter comeback last week.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would have to agree. I mean, it's hard. I'm not gonna be able to put any more money on the Bears for a little
This
bit.
is your last time.
But yeah, I mean, the Rams are banged up, and I mean, you made a good point. Like, as a emotional win in that comeback against the Niners. Next up, we got the Washington Commanders now sitting at 2-1. Jaden Daniels just looks insane as a rookie quarterback.
Amazing.
Like arguably could have a better season than CJ Stroud had last year, but if he keeps it up,
Yeah,
a long way to go. But they're headed to the 1-2 Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals offense looks phenomenal through the first 2 weeks. Couldn't get it going against the Lions last week. I think this is a pretty sneaky, fun matchup.
Oh yeah.
Not phenomenal, or not, I keep saying that word, but not the best defenses at least. And two teams that really want to air it out and even use your running backs as passing options. So I mean, I think this one could be a fun game. Yeah, I mean, are you riding with Jaden Daniels? Are you believing what you're seeing so far? Or
Yeah,
yeah, you are.
definitely am. Especially as a Jaden Daniels fantasy owner. Good to see this dividends pay off right away. And certainly going to be a fun game anytime you get a total above 50. I'm with you on that. I am believing in Jaden Daniels, and I do like what I've seen out of the Commanders these last few weeks. But part of this is like the smell test, and the Commanders don't smell like a 3-1 team. The Cardinals don't really smell like a 1-3 team. And so I think the Cardinals are going to win this game. And again, going the theme of going off trend, I think the Cardinals are really reversing the trend, regression to the mean here. I think that I like the Cardinals here in the spread. Again, we're 2 weeks removed from the Commanders should have lost to the Giants. Like people forget that. People like the dog on Daniel Jones and the Giants. They should have lost that game. It was a great win against the Bengals, and I cannot take that away from them or the phenomenal play that Jaden Daniels had. But I think this is a very similar Cardinals team that's maybe like 1 year ahead of them. The Commanders, that is, very mobile quarterback, but better wide receivers, dynamic wide receivers, dual threat running back, dual threat quarterback, pretty lax defense. I think that the offensive talent on the Cardinals is more than what's there in the Commanders, and I think I'm going to take the Cardinals to win this game for sure. It's really hard. Three and the hook is tough, but I think I'm going to be on the Cardinals spread there as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with the Cardinals. I mean, even week one in their loss to the Bills, I think that was a very winnable game for them.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get the offense going, but they were in it there with the Lions as well last week. So I mean, they played some tough teams. I mean, those are two very tough teams to play in losses. I think the Cardinals are a legit threat this year. I mean, they could be a wild card playoff team if they get it going.
Very well said. I think much like the Cowboys last week, they ran into a desperate team. This being the Lions this time, like being 1-1. Again, the Lions don't pass the smell test of a 1-2 team, and that's the reason they won that game, in my opinion. They're no without a doubt better, and they have a better defense. They have a better offensive scheme and better offensive talent. That doesn't take away that the Cardinals are that to the Commanders, if that makes sense. They had a tough week against the Lions, but I think this is above average or average football team at the minimum, and that's why they get back on track this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like this is really where we started heating up last year too, playing some of the trends, like not
Yeah,
driving too high off of last week's bias. But
it's a
yeah,
new.
yeah, I think that's really where we start picking up when we start getting the data to work off of. But next matchup, largest spread of the week, got the 1-2 Patriots going to San Francisco to also play the 1-2 Niners. I mean, I'll tell you right now, or based off of what you've been saying, Niners don't smell like a 1-2 team. They're very banged up. I mean, it's not. They're definitely going to be without some guys in this one. And the other thing I do have to say about the Patriots is they will also have extra time for playing on last Thursday. So I feel like you can make some cases for them, but I was on the Patriots last week and I paid for it. A little too scared to do that again. What are you leaning?
Yeah, that offensive line is just so shoddy that I don't think they're going to be able to put up more than 10 points this game. I don't think the Niners have to really pass the ball at all to beat the Patriots, even given their solid defense here. Um, the 49ers have proven they can run the ball pretty effectively with Mason back there and their offensive line. But even beyond that, again, I think they're just going to be coming out hot after that loss at home, or after that loss now being at home. Um, you saw that Brissett just had no time against that Jets defense. I think it's going to be a very similar story, whether it's him or Drake May, whenever they decide to throw him in. But I don't think putting Drake May in against the 49ers team on the road is very friendly. So I'm sure it's going to be Jacoby Brissett again. I don't even know if there's discussions behind Drake May. But regardless, it's impossible for him to have time in that backfield, no matter what defense you're playing, given the quality of his offensive line in front of him. I don't know how they're going to be able to put up points against the Niners. I think you see a very similar result in this game as you saw when the last time the Patriots played against the Jets.
Yeah,
So spread and money line here for the Niners for me.
definitely money line Niners. I don't TBD on the spread. Probably still leaning Pats plus 10. I just think it's going to be a
Well, yeah, I
gross
mean,
first
like I
quarter
said
here.
in the beginning of this video, every week the largest favorite of the week has lost outright. Now that's
Wow.
not going to happen this time, but the heavy favorites are not playing up to that bill that they've been getting of much more dominant team than their opponent this
Right.
week or this
Yeah.
season thus
Also
far.
imagine a lot of money on the Niners regardless.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
next matchup, we have two 1-2 teams. Cleveland Browns heading to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. Raiders are still sticking with Minshew, despite just his mediocre play this far. Browns also coming off a bad loss to the Giants. I feel like, in my mind, I think I'm leaning with the Browns. I think they're the better overall team, better defense. Their offense, like we said, isn't going to really get going until there's more of a change at quarterback. But I mean, it should still be enough in this matchup on the road, in my opinion. What are you taking?
Yeah, I'm completely with you here for everything that you said. I echo that. My one fear is that in a low scoring game, it's like who's the biggest X factor here on offense, that is, and that's Devontae Adams. So no matter who's at quarterback, they can always throw it to him. Obviously, Myles Garrett, very scary, but you got Max Crosby, kind of the same scariness on their side of the line and team. But I'm with you here, Browns. I think, again, just a better overall, more solid team. Uh, you can very easily make the argument that they're a better coach team too. Stefanski um, coming off coach of the year there too. Although we do love Pearson there in Vegas, but I'm with you here. I think the Browns would do to get back on track. I'm a little surprised they got stopped. I'm not surprised they lost the Giants. Actually, given their own 2 desperation there, but I think it is time for them to get another win here. I think they have a chance to do it against a weaker Raiders opponent.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Browns get more back to last season's form, at least. But next up, AFC West matchup, Chiefs 3-0. Kind of waiting for that dud to happen. They usually drop in September. Maybe it's not going to happen this year, but they're heading to LA to play the Chargers. Herbert still dealing with an ankle injury, so we might see Heineke. I think that's more so what that line indicates for us here. Are you touching this game? Or, I mean, yeah, I mean, this one's hard for me with no Herbert. I feel like I can't trust the Chargers without him, although they've kind of turned into a run-heavy team. But do you have any reason to decide with the Chargers in this one?
Well, from a money line perspective, not really. It's tough to take any team money line against the Chiefs, especially when they're projected to lose by a full touchdown here. Is Justin Herbert confirmed not playing this game?
Not confirmed yet, but
Okay.
it's seeming like he won't. But
If he
whatever.
doesn't, then I would not touch this game. If he does, I like the spread for the Chargers, especially given the total this low. We've seen the Raiders, we've seen the Chiefs drop against team like the Raiders when they're playing divisional games, usually a little bit later in the season. But I haven't seen the Chiefs total this low in quite some time. Indicative of the fact that they're having a little bit of offensive identity crisis with some change at running back, a lot of changes at wide receiver this offseason. I think I really like the Chargers ground and pound game in a matchup like this to keep a game close, regardless of who's at quarterback. But again, to take that +7 against the Patrick Mahomes team, I'm going to need to see Justin Herbert in there. So TBD on that spread, but of course, hard not to take the Chiefs money line the way they're playing, especially if they're going to go up against a backup quarterback, even against a divisional opponent on the road.
Yeah, yeah, I'm in that divisional factor. But we got three games left, just a few minutes for us to go. This is the Sunday night football matchup. The 3-0 Bills playing the 1-2 Ravens. Bills remain perfect despite some of those offseason moves where I kind of thought they would have somewhat of a drop off. I mean, I have to go with the Ravens in this one. I know last week was desperate, but this also doesn't seem like a team that should be 1-3, and kind of how we've been talking a lot of these games. I don't know if I really think the Bills should be a 4-0 team either up
I'll
until
tell
this
you,
point.
the Bills could and should be 4-0. Josh Allen's playing MVP football, and he will be the MVP if he plays every game this season. But not much has changed for the Ravens. They still can't lose this game, and I don't think they're going to. I'm on the Ravens money line as well on prime time. It's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It's like you said, Josh Allen is playing MVP type football, but I mean, he's cut down on the turnovers. I feel like those are bound
He's
to
so
happen at some
efficient.
point. I mean, yeah, he's playing great football, but I think against a really tough defense like this, like you said last week, his guys were running wide open against the Jaguars. We have to force it a little bit more. I think this is a game where maybe has two turnovers.
Very, very possible. And if it's gonna happen against the defense, it's gonna be the Ravens.
Yeah. All right, now two Monday Night Football games again this week. This one definitely the worst matchup and
This is
maybe
the
the
worst
worst
one.
matchup on the slate. The 0-3 Titans. Uh, Honestly, personnel-wise, I think they're a solid team. Will Levis is really
Oh
hurting
my
hurting
God.
them, and the Dolphins just looked super dysfunctional. Skylar Thompson even got injured, and they turned to Tim Boyle. Maybe we'll see Tyler Huntley in this one. But do you have any real thoughts on this game?
Oh yeah, I'm taking the Titans to win this one. I'm with it. There, Will Levis is awful. Off like three turnovers a game, every game, awful. But they're not that bad outside of him. It's just he gives the defense a free 7 points every game. But I'm going to take the Titans, just like the Jaguars. I'm going to keep taking the Titans until um, they start getting on a roll and they get too popular. But right now, it's the perfect time to buy in on the Titans, and they're favored again. I'm taking the Titans here for sure.
I am too. I mean, I just
They
hope
have a
Will
starting
Levis doesn't
quarterback and
start.
the other team doesn't. That's really all it is. Titans taking them.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. Better O line or that's an argument, but
Better
yeah,
D line, I can tell you that. Their D line is
yeah.
impressive.
Dolphins line is banged up. But last game of the matchup, wanted to save a little bit of time for this one because I think this is a great matchup.
This is a
Got
great
the 3
matchup.
0 Seahawks. PFF has them as the number one rated defense right now, the number one rated coverage defense. Talked about how good that secondary is. They're starting to live up to the hype and exceed that even. They're heading to Detroit, who's now 2-1. Monday night football matchup, and both teams coming off of wins. Do you see Detroit's offense really start to get going? I feel like it's a matter of time before it happens, unless this might be somewhat of a slump here on the offensive side. At the same time, their defense has picked it up. Um, that's kind of how I view this game, though. If Detroit's offense really gets going, I think they could beat Seattle in a shootout. But if this one stays low scoring, I like Seattle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got a lot of thoughts about this game. I appreciate you saving some time, so it's a great one. I think about the first thing is this game last year. I think it happened in week 2 last year where it was like a 37-34 kind of game, went to overtime, and Seattle beat Detroit in Detroit. If I haven't forgotten about it, I guarantee you Dan Campbell and his Lions team hasn't either. Uh, again, going back to the smell test, Seattle doesn't quite cut it as a 4-0 team in my mind. They're not as good as a team. I don't think anyone here thinks Seattle's an actual better team than the Lions, despite the record. Obviously, the spread implies that as well. I like the Lions a lot to win this game simply because Seattle's not a 4-0 team. But to elaborate further and have some more concrete points, I don't love the run game that they've had. Obviously, Kenneth Walker III hasn't been playing, but Zach Charbonnet hasn't been that efficient. He's been lighting up from a fantasy perspective because I have him and he's been playing great and getting touchdowns, catching the ball out of the